Hey, everybody. Thanks for joining us here, the regular FlareVet crew that you're used to. And today with us is Dr. Kate Boatright. I know most of you have heard about her at least, or gone to her talks, or read her, um, you know, articles and all that. So, of course, we want to talk about mentorship. I struggled between spectrum of care and mentorship to talk with her. But I think mentorship for me is like my passion. I part of why we do this FlareVet thing is to mentor other people on practical advice and things and anything related with Vetmed and mentorship. I think kind of sets the stage of what your career is gonna be, or the things that you're gonna look for later on. In your career. So I think it's a good topic to talk about and offer some practical advice and so wanted to just start with Dr. Boatright and ask you, what got you. Tell us a little bit about you first. Just a little summary, and then if you want to let us know what interested you in mentoring veterinarians and what got you there.
Yeah, so I graduated from UPenn in 2013. I went straight into general practice. So I actually entered vet school planning on doing a specialty. And by like second year, I was like, nope, I just want to get out there. So I've worked in rural small animal practice since graduating in a few different clinics in Pennsylvania, both general practice and emergency. And I had a fantastic experience being mentored at my first clinic. And then at my second clinic, just the mentorship wasn't there. And I didn't realize how much I still needed, like a year out of school. And so I ended up leaving that practice after about a year and a half, and then entered ER medicine for a while. And it was kind of between those experiences that I, realized, not that I didn't know mentorship was important, but just like how, it can be promised and then not delivered. And so I started mentoring new grads myself and students. And then as I looked at the landscape of mentorship, like I still work with students. I love working with students and new grads. But I realized like we tell all of these vets, hey, you need to provide mentorship. You're a practice owner. If you want to hire a new grad, you've got to have mentorship. But nobody actually teaches anyone how to do that or sets, any kind of structure. And so for me, that was my goal, was to add in, provide some structure, provide some support. And so I kind of started like mentoring the mentors to give them that support.
Gotcha. Yeah, that's kind of what interested me as well. Can you hear me? Okay.
Yep.
Okay. There was some problem. I think Sammy just joined us. I think there's an issue with her mic. Because when I unmuted, like I hear myself again. Sammy, if you want to rejoin, I think it's better like this. I don't know if you guys hear it at all.
I could hear the feedback as well.
You could as well? Okay.
I could,
Sammy,
yeah.
if you want to, let me see. Can you hear us, Sammy? Because I hear feedback from you a little bit. You want to go back and come back in? Okay, that's good.
Sammy broke the internet today.
I kind of
no. It's
kind of like how it sounded.
Yeah, it was very robotic. It was good for like the AI talk, I think.
Yes.
Because like then you don't know if I'm real or not. Like, yeah, I could be an AI robot, but I've heard like if you make them do this, they can't. If it's AI, they can't do that because their face would mess up or whatever. But anyway, yeah, man, Dr. Boatright, I have a similar experience where I had really good mentorship when I first started. And then after that, I had no support, no backup. I saw other vets that needed help, and I was kind of like the one that was around to help them out, even without the titles or the goal wasn't to mentor vets, but then it happened, and then I liked it, so it was rewarding, right? So, I think part of it is that everybody wins, not just the vets, but the clinics win too, because they get more people that want to stay around, right? More like sustainability at the clinic. You get less turnover and vets, but at the same time, you get veterinarians that are learning all these skills, and getting really good at what they're meant to be, and they start liking their job. I feel like, I think that um, one of the things, it's that I wanted to ask you, and I don't know if anybody else wants to talk about it, is what, like, as a mentor, like, what are the things, like, 5 characteristics that you find in people that, like, every mentor should have, like top 5 things, if you want to start, Dr. Boatright, and maybe we can take turns and kind of, maybe not 5, but at least a few characteristics.
Yeah, so I mean, I think one of the biggest things, like, first of all, no matter who you are, is you have to want to do it. So you have to want to mentor. I've found, like, the worst mentors are the people who, who kind of get told, like, hey, we're bringing a new grad on and you have to support them. And if they don't have that interest in the mentorship, it just doesn't work. And then the second thing is just having really good, like, emotional intelligence, being able to, communicate and connect with people. And then things like listening, being good at giving effective feedback. I would say, like, your clinical skills don't even make the top 5 for me, because it really is, like, true mentorship
Interesting.
is supporting the whole person. And so it's all of those more, like, softer skills that I think make a good mentor. Before it, like, it doesn't matter how much clinical experience you have. I think for the most part.
Right.
Greg, I think you're muted.
Yeah.
Sorry.
It's all good.
I was going to say, can you talk about your book and just how it's structured and laid out, and give us, like, a kind of a teaser on that?
Yes. Can you give me 1 second? And maybe one of you guys can give your opinion on the aspects of a mentor, and I'll be back.
Sure, for sure. I had notes about, like, to me, there's 2 parts of it. There's, like, the professional part, where you're teaching the actual skills, where you're teaching how to draw blood, how to put a catheter in, if they haven't in school very well, or how to do certain surgeries, right? Of course, and how to work up some cases. But that's just, like, part of it. I think the other part of it is all the emotional mentorship that you do, like how do you get over problems, and how you get over conflict and things like that. So
that's what I would totally agree with that. Like, I do relief, so I'm not always with the new grads a bunch, but a lot of it's just like that difficulty you have when you start out with making decisions with uncertainty, and feeling like, oh, I got to get right, because I've been taking these multiple choice exams my whole life, and now it's, like, very, very messy. And that kind of reassurance to them that, like, that's okay. Like, you're going to make a ton of mistakes, like, and kind of the resiliency to get through that, and to reassure yourself, like, stay calm, stay present, you're doing great. That's what I find. I mean, I know I experienced that a ton. And when I talk to new grads now, like, you can see it on their face. They're like, should I do this? Should I do that? Should I do that? And just, like, almost having this paradoxical mentality of, like, you don't have to get it right. You just have to be, like, you got to be confident. You got to move forward, and you got to be okay with the mistakes that you're going to make, and not beat yourself up about it. Right. Cause that's a quick path to burnout, I think.
I think that is important, because I think the biggest thing from school to the real world is you go from, like, here's a clear right answer, right? Like the NAVLE, A is correct, B is incorrect. and then you're out in the real world, and it's like nobody tells you if you got it right or not. Like if you're a relief vet, you may or an emergency vet, you may never see this patient again, and you have to find a way to be okay with, like, I think, and confident in a job well done when there's really not a lot of metrics except when there's like a clear disaster. And I think supporting people through that shift is one of the most important things you can do, because that is be nice to the vet techs, be nice to the staff. They will save your butt a bunch. But I think personality fit is underestimated in mentorship, right? Like if you're not gonna get along with somebody, like this is not, like, professionally that's a lot easier if you don't get along with somebody to work with them. But if you're mentoring someone, like, and you can't communicate effectively and you can't communicate in a way that works for both of you, it is gonna go poorly. And I think, like, for these people who get assigned, as Kate mentioned, to mentorship, it's like, well, I really love teaching people who want to be here. I can't stand teaching people who don't want to be here. And
Yeah.
if you don't get to pick, that's very hard. Like like all the folks who are professors, like, man, that is tough, because you're going to get somebody like me on a swine rotation who's like, wow, it is 4 degrees outside. I do not really love what we're doing.
And it's loud.
Yeah, it's terrible, and
Screaming, and yeah.
This is like they're having a blast, and I'm like, this is like, if that's a bad, like, if it's professionally, personally a bad fit, mentorship is going to be really hard to, like, meaningful mentorship is going to be hard to get off the ground.
Yeah, and for me, like, when I first graduated, I was doing interviews. I noticed that the interviews, when they were more personal about who you are, it felt more comfortable. And I feel like, since, you know, there's students out there that are gonna start looking for jobs and things like that, if they're not already in, it's kind of late in the game. But you know, I feel like you need to look for that, right?
That's a really important aspect. Like, just don't take a job just because it's a, you know, like a impressive job or a high paying job or something else, right? Like, you're gonna spend at least a third of your life doing it. Like, a good fit is worth a lot on the paycheck, right? I think, you know, I could make more money doing things besides owning my own practice, right? Like, there are more lucrative paths in veterinary medicine, but than a single doctor practice. But enjoying it and, like, fitting in, like, a place where you fit in, is worth a lot.
Yeah, no, I agree. And as a student, sometimes you go for the high numbers, but
Always,
it really, you know, it's like, I've had new grads that are put to be like medical directors, you know, because they need the license to open the clinic, and they say they're gonna get mentorship, but it's like remote mentorship, and it's not the same thing. You know, I feel like having that person there that you get along and you fit their clinic, the way they think. For me, my first job, my boss was like, hey, I made every mistake there is in Vetmed. I'm here to help you not make them, right? Or to help you get through them. And that made me so comfortable, because I was so worried about messing up, you know, and when somebody's telling you, I messed up a bunch of times, I'm here to help you not mess up. Sure. That is so valuable. And I think that should be something that students should be looking for in their interviews and as they start their new jobs. Like Dr. Boatright, like, don't you think, like, when you're looking for a job, it's not just the skills. Oh, that vet is great, he's the top vet in the country, whatever, but you need that emotional mentorship.
So
I
have a question for Kate, if I can.
Yeah, go ahead.
Like, something specific.
Yeah.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I have a question. Like, so what would you tell, you know, new grads when they're interviewing at a practice, like, that says, oh, we've got great mentorship? Because nobody says, like, oh, our mentorship is shit, right?
Right.
Like,
It sucks.
Nobody advertises that on the
We're
job.
Terrible at it. Yeah.
Yeah. Like, it might not say anything, but
so I mean, I think
what do you tell them when they're like, what do they need to do to find out what they need?
Yeah. So the first thing they need to do is they need to ask, like, okay, so you say you have great mentorship. What does that look like? What does that mean to you? So have the practice really define what they offer in mentorship. But then the second part of that is you need to know as a new grad what you're looking for. I'm a fan of like formalized mentorship, which is what the book that I wrote helps to set up. But some new grads are okay with just hey, give me, be around, answer questions for me when I need them, and are okay with a more informal setup. The problem comes when the new grad wants formalized mentorship and the clinic offers that informal mentorship. And then we have someone who is unhappy, and up to, I think the last statistic I saw was like up to 45% of new grads will leave their first practice in the first 12 to 18 months. Number one cause, lack of mentorship. But I don't think it's always a true, like there was zero mentorship. I think more often than not, it is a factor of I had expectations for mentorship that weren't met. And that's what made me feel like there was a lack of mentorship. So first and foremost, when you're interviewing is just defining what mentorship looks like and making sure that that matches with what you are offering and what the practice is offering. And then that's why I'm a big fan of setting out like a mentorship agreement that really defines what we're looking for and what we're expecting. And it also holds everyone accountable. That way, if the mentor isn't delivering the things that the new grad wanted, or if the mentee isn't following through on what they're supposed to be doing, you have it in writing. You say, hey, this is what we agreed on. Because you can also, Bill, I think you kind of started talking about how you can teach someone who wants to be taught.
Yeah.
And so mentees absolutely have a role in making mentorship successful.
Oh yeah.
So
at least half of it, right? Like, and I think you touched on something, and I think I would really encourage any new grads or soon to be new grads listening to focus on that. Like, if you don't know what you want and your desire for mentorship stops at like, I have a desire for mentorship, and like you don't know what that looks like or what that is, and you haven't been in clinics to see what works for you and what doesn't work for you, we're all gonna fall short, right? Mm-hmm. Like the you could have Kate Boatright as a mentor, and if you're like, it could go bad, right? Like, so you have to know what you want and what works for you, and you're a doctor now, you can know those things, and go out and find that before you get to the interview, right? Before you're in front of me asking about like, oh, do you offer mentorship? Yeah, well, of course, this is what it looks like. Well, I don't know if that works for me. Okay, well, me neither, right?
Yeah. So I say, like, if you're gonna if you're gonna ask a question during the interview, you better know what your own answer to that question would be. Yep. Because it can, they can say like, okay, this is what mentorship looks like for us, and if that doesn't
jive, then that's okay.
Yeah, but you have to know what it is you're looking for.
And I think in interviews, both parties tend to get like a little people pleasing, like, oh, we can do that, we can make this work, we can find a way. And it's like, listen, this is or it isn't.
Yeah.
And we should be honest about that. Like, your goal is not to get the job. Your goal is to find out if this is a job you want, and if I'm trying to find out if this is someone I want at my hospital.
Yeah, if we're the right fit for each other.
Right. That, not win me over, me winning you over, persuade you. It's learning, not persuasion. It's exploration.
Yeah. It's almost like the same thing that's gonna be the glue for the clinic as you guys mature on, right, in the relationship, as just, you know, colleagues, right? Like, where you have a common purpose, you have goals, you have, you know, you don't only learn from this person, but you're teaching them as well as a new student, right? Like, because as a new, you're not only getting information, you're also providing for the clinic, and you know, you start developing that back and forth that eventually becomes, a years-long relationship between two veterinarians, right? So I think having that common purpose in the beginning and talking about what the expectations are on that mentorship is really what really matters, huh?
Kate, did
Yeah,
you have
absolutely. Setting those expectations is 100%. If you don't do that, we've got a problem.
Kate, did you have any, you're talking about kind of a lack of mentorship in your experience? Did you have anybody either in vet school or later on that you kind of pulled your experience as a mentee, how it should go? Does that make any sense?
Yeah. So when I was in vet school, it was when there were I was in vet school when the first AHA mentoring guidelines were written and published. So I had friends who were working on those guidelines. So it was a big conversation of what mentorship looks like, and how do we make it so that it's financially sustainable for both the mentee and the practice. And so for me, I didn't have a super formalized mentorship in my first practice, but I did go into it knowing hey, these are some of the things I'm looking for. I wanted to have a longer initial appointments. I wanted to have the ability to meet with my mentor regularly. And so for me, that was, I knew what I wanted, at least in that sense. Now I feel like I've gone off track and I've forgotten what the question was.
Well, no, just is there a story of your experience as a mentee that either went well or went poorly, and sort of what you picked out of that, how that shaped your writing and sort of motivation to do this?
Yeah. So one of the big experiences I had was in one of the practices I was at. I felt like I was doing okay, but that I wasn't getting a lot of feedback.
I have kids. I know exactly how it is. It's all good.
And I just
we all have a boss in our lives that is not our boss, right?
Yeah. And I just got back from being gone a week for AVMA, so
I get that. It's all good.
Yeah. So yeah, my very first or my second clinic just wasn't getting a lot of regular feedback, and then I got sat down for my 1-year review, and I was handed a 6-page letter of everything I'd done wrong over the last year.
So they didn't tell you anything. They just added it to the pile for the airing of the grievances moment.
Yep, pretty much. So that was my
crazy.
1-year review was here's everything you've done wrong this year. And it's so much of this, I could have corrected sooner had I known it was a problem. And a lot of it had to do with communication with the staff and delegation and things like that. And so, I think for me, that was one of the really eye-opening moments of okay, you shouldn't do this. We should be giving feedback regularly along the way, and addressing issues as soon as it, comes around. So I think for me, that was one of the kind of defining moments that I share a lot when I'm lecturing.
Sure.
Because it's I saw all your faces. That's the usual reaction I get is oh my gosh.
Wow.
So, there were definitely I think that's one of the things that really sticks out is
I have 2 questions.
More of the what you don't want to do than, this was done really well sometimes.
So that's probably something that you want to set out in the mentorship agreement, right?
Yeah.
Were there also 6 pages on all the stuff you'd done right?
Oh no.
No, of course not. This is
of course not.
hard and fast rule, right? Anybody who wants to be a mentor, you can give negative feedback, you can give criticism, but if your compliments have to be as rich and as vibrant and as detailed as the criticism, or maybe shut up for a while. And also, and the other thing about feedback, not during performance.
No, true.
Unless
the same day though.
Medically crucial, unless your knots are loose on those ligatures, right?
Yeah.
You can wait till tomorrow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think
and maybe
it should be.
And Sammy
like,
had a
close
question
to
that
the
we wanted to
problem.
read, but
Close to the problem, right? Not a week or a month later.
Not-
Maybe not
Right.
during while you're doing surgery, but like
yeah, like a
close
full volume
enough so that you don't
investigator.
go home like thinking about it. And like that's one good thing I liked about my first job. They would tell me things that day so that I wasn't like too worried about it later on. But Sammy, I think, is having a little problem with her mic, but she had a question for us. It's on the screen there. How do you balance the mentorship priority with other priorities that a new grad might have, like location, salary, and other things? And that I think that question's for you, Dr. Boatright.
Yeah, so I mean, so the AVMA every year surveys the graduating class, and like one of the questions they always ask is like, what went into where you picked your first job. And for the last 5 years, mentorship has topped the list over salary, location, anything else. And I've talked to new grads who are like, oh yeah, I took a job that was $20,000 less in salary because they had the mentorship program and they were able to show me that what they could offer me. So I think for a lot of new grads, like they will put mentorship over other things. I think where location sometimes becomes a little more tricky is like if you have a family and you're trying to balance a spouse's job and yours. I said my first clinic had an amazing mentorship experience, but I left after a year because my husband and I were living 3 hours apart. Because we couldn't find jobs together. And so, for me, that was like, okay, I love this clinic, but this is not sustainable for my personal life. So it definitely can weigh in. But I think for the most part, most new grads will put mentorship above everything else.
It's good. It's important. I have a question for Bill or Greg. I don't know if you guys want to answer this. Do you think like mentorship ever ends? Like, do you feel like you're good to go ever? And where do you get your mentorship from as like more experienced vets? And maybe Sammy can write her answer in the chat and we can say it out loud too.
I think it changes, right? I think does it ever end? I like what Kate mentioned. Like, it should good mentor programs like should have an end date where you can like decide to re-up with somebody or they can end, so it's not just this awkward like in between space. But I think the mentorship changes because the goals change, right? Like when you're an associate or when you're opening a clinic or when you've been a practice owner for 5 years, those are different skill sets, right? Like those are different things. And you might find that you're doing really well at some things and doing really poorly at others. I don't think you have to have like the perfect, pedestal mentor of all time. Like I'll share a story about Greg and Sammy, actually, who both made an effort to stop by my lectures at AVMA last weekend. And from a collegial support, kindness, leadership, like way to as a way to set the standard and a way to behave towards your colleagues was like, that meant a great deal to me, right? Like you better believe I won't miss an opportunity to see one of Greg or Sammy's lectures in the future, right? Like, and Greg's are excellent, by the way. I haven't seen any of Sammy's yet, shame on me, but I like that kind of stuff when you can support your colleagues, and that means a lot. Like that's a really, like, take those opportunities when you get them, because they don't present themselves every day. And
so you can be mentored by somebody that's like, a colleague. You don't necessarily need this like Yoda.
It becomes more
person
support
telling,
than mentorship, right? Like it becomes more,
right.
And a lot of what we've talked about in FlareVet and in tackling a lot of the mental health issues, like whether it's comedy or women in Vetmed or all these other things that we've dealt with, a lot of them come down to support systems, and mentorship is an important, and it ought to be a well-defined support system. But there's a lot of ways that looks, right? There's a lot of ways to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree. And Bill, I came to your lecture, which was great. And it was totally just to drive people towards my own material. So where the questions are coming from, but I appreciate that your positive perspective on that. And I think
you guys stopped by. I mean, Sammy couldn't even stay, but the fact that she stopped by meant the world to me. Like, she went out of her way to make that effort. Like, that meant a great deal to me. Thank you.
well, that's like I think I think it's about, like, mentorship is really about support. Like, how do I, how am I there to support you? Because it's, for me, I think about the mentor-mentee relationship as this balance between, like, vulnerability and confidence. And, when you still, I mean, I've been out for 12 years and I still ask questions of colleagues, and there's a bit of a scariness about that. There's a bit of, like, an embarrassment. Like, I'm going to get, I'm going to feel stupid. I'm going to feel like I'm doing something wrong. I'm going to feel judged. And you really need to you need to push that aside, drop your ego, and go be vulnerable. And that's sort of that's not quite the opposite of being a good mentor. Like, being a good mentor, there's also some vulnerability here. Like, here's a mistake I made. Here's something I wish I had known different. But there's that balance between, like, this wisdom and this uncertainty, or this I don't know, vulnerability, and, like, really striking that balance of like, let me see you where you are. Let me guide you towards the wise path here, not to get all Yoda, but, like, I do like that. I'm thinking of a cartoon with Yoda as a veterinarian now, but, like,
Perfect.
there's that real balance of that. So it never ends. I mean, I'll look to old vets, I'll look to young vets to sort of, what can I take from them to be a better veterinarian, and to grow? Like, it's mentorship is just like, it's just growth, and you never want to stop growing. You never want to, like, be done with that. So
Absolutely.
That's what
I agree totally. That's what I was going to say. I think mentorship only ends when growth ends. There's always going to be somebody who's a step ahead of you in whatever it is that you do, that can offer some insight and guide you on the path. And the only time that ends, and the only time that you should stop collaborating or, seeking some sort of counsel in your growth journey, is when you stop growing. And that should be your first red flag to yourself.
We're always learning. That's a good thing about
and from each
our
other.
profession.
Like, it becomes like, oh man, there's nobody on this call from whom I haven't learned something in the last couple of months, right? Like, and that's
same thing.
I feel like that's what we're supposed to do. And I feel like that first mentor, the first couple of mentors are where you get it. Like, you guys talk about having, like, oh, my first job out of school was a great mentor. Like, I never had one. So, and the leadership I had was terrible for a very long time. And so it's one of the reasons I became obsessed with being good at it, is because I was like, man, it really sucked when you had bad leadership and you had bad mentorship and you had all that kind of stuff. So why don't I figure out how to not be terrible, so that the people, like, I don't leave, a scorched earth behind me.
Didn't that interest you in, like, mentoring other people? Well, right? Like, when you have a bad experience, it's like, okay, I don't want everybody to go through this. So let me do a better job than that, right? So that's like part of the and that's part of why we're doing these,
after us, who come after
it's like the
us.
opposite of the mindset of, like, I suffered, so you have to suffer too.
Right. Yes.
It's the exact opposite. It's like, I suffered and I don't want you to.
Because we came from that, I think. We came from that other mentality,
So it could be easier. Why wouldn't we make it easier for the guys who come after us?
Right.
Yeah. So, Dr. Boatright, like, one of the things that I wanted to talk about is the difference between mentorship and training, right? Mm-hmm. And like, when you're training somebody, it's, like, kind of easy to say, well, step A comes before step B, so you did it wrong. Do step A first. But, like, when somebody makes a mistake that is a little more tricky, and you have to have those hard conversations, I think that's my biggest challenge as a mentor, is when I have to have those conversations about things that might be a little bit subjective, and like, if you have any advice for mentors to, like, how do you have those conversations? How do you prepare for that? Because my worry is that I'm going to make somebody upset and less interested in my mentorship. So, like, do you have any tips for that?
Yeah. So I actually just did a lecture at AVMA that was how to share complaints with new grads. So I partnered with Dr. Cindy Courtney, who's a conflict researcher. So the two of us partnered and kind of went, basically went through that of like, okay, like when things aren't going well, how do we address that? And I think the first thing is just in that agreement, setting up that regular feedback. And, I recommend having, weekly mentor meetings and incorporate some feedback in each of those meetings. So it becomes regular. I think you as the mentor get more comfortable giving feedback that way. When you're doing it regularly, and the mentee, it takes some of the stigma out of receiving feedback. But then when you have to have those hard conversations, one is it's going to go better if you've built that bank of trust and you've discussed a lot of the positives that they've been doing. You kind of have that bank to draw from. So, you're not only hitting them, with the negatives, but then trying to be as objective as possible is important. Like say, like, hey, we've gotten several complaints from clients and they don't feel that, you're communicating clearly. So talking to the clients and finding out, okay, why did you feel that way? Was it that you didn't feel like you understood all of the risks of the surgery that they recommended? Or was it that, you felt that they were rushing? But trying to get as specific as possible and as objective as possible, I think is really important, because the more objective we can be about the feedback, the easier I think it is to take. It's, you want to, talk about, the action, the consequence. What does this mean for, what does fixing this behavior mean for how you're going to work towards your professional goals? What does fixing this behavior mean for how you're going to benefit the clinic? And then also thinking about, yes, a lot of people, will take feedback personally. I think the people who give feedback the best, do it as objectively as possible so that it doesn't feel like an attack. You don't want to attack the personality and things like that.
Gotcha. Yeah, and we've all been there. Like go ahead, Greg.
I was going to say, my mentors in my internship, I think they had the opposite. I think they felt like they should relentlessly attack our personalities. And it wasn't enjoyable. It was not that fun.
Sammy,
so for me, like I remember the one time I got feedback about not seeing an emergency that I should have, and it wasn't a lot really about like the medical part of it, but more about like, why didn't you get up at 3 a.m. for this person? And I was never asked like, were you feeling okay, or where did something happen to you that you hear the phone? Like, no, it was more about, hey, like we need to keep these clients here. We cannot lose emergencies to other clinics, and we just lost a client. And why didn't you next time you need to be there for them? And to me, it kind of, I think it's important to ask the person their take on the situation too before we start kind of like telling them what they did wrong, what the other person thought was wrong, because maybe they themselves know something was funny about that interaction. So it's good to get that information from them too. I feel like.
Yeah, I think I always say like lead with curiosity and empathy. And then if you get stuck, you can always come back to that. But I always start my feedback sessions with like, how do you feel like things are going? Is there anything on your mind that you're concerned about? Because a lot of times I feel like you at least have that like gut feeling that like, okay, there's something's off. I know things aren't perfect right now. Or maybe you say like, hey, like I feel like I had a really bad interaction with that client, but I don't know why. But, I think giving the mentee time to kind of start and share their perspective, and then working from there is a good approach.
And I feel like ending with a joke, right, Greg? Like if you end the conversation with like address the problem, right? And be clear and be good, and at the end maybe be funny about it, because we've all been there. We've all had problems happen, and I think that we can always make light of it and learn from it, and in a positive note, right? Like that conversation, I think leaving that conversation in a weird way, it's not gonna make the person really correct their problem, versus like just kind of making sure that when you're done that conversation, everybody's like more at peace, right? And not worse, like when you got the 6 pages, right?
I think,
And then like, okay, you're good.
I think
Go ahead, Bill.
I think that then I'm going to let Sammy chime in here, but I think the most important thing Kate said, and she breezed right by it, because experts often breeze right by the things that are fundamental to them and not so much to everybody else, but like weekly check-ins, like that functional mechanical weekly check-in lets all this other stuff happen really easily. And if you're not having one-on-ones with your direct reports weekly, you find a way. Like, you needed to be doing that. But Sammy's been had something to say.
I feel like when I think about the difference between training and mentorship, and I'd love your thoughts on this, Kate, is I think about training on sort of like a smaller, more zoomed in scale, where it's like, okay, after you do surgery, you need to wash the instruments and then you put them in the autoclave and you sterilize them. And like, this is how you do A, B, C. Versus mentorship is like much more zoomed out. And as a mentor, you have to be much more observant, and you're giving somebody advice based on like in an effort to help them to understand themselves, to understand their path, to see themselves more clearly, and to get themselves on the best path that's most authentic and aligned to them. And that's such a harder skill for the mentor. And I feel like when I think about good mentors that I've had in my career thus far, it's somebody who I feel like just gave a damn about me. They really cared about me and what was best for me. And you can feel that straight away. And the second thing was that they gave me advice that was best for me, even if it wasn't what was best for them. So you might have someone in your clinic that is like, hey, you're looking to fill surgeries on Tuesdays, and you hire somebody and you want them to fill the surgery slot on Tuesdays. But after some time you see, hey, this person kind of freaking hates surgery. They hate it. They don't want to do it. They don't enjoy it. They're not motivated to get better, but they're amazing at dentals. They love them, and they're not doing any dentals, even if my dental spots are all covered, and to just sit down with that person and then say, hey, this doesn't seem like it's your jam, actually. Maybe we should find something that's more aligned for you. It seems you're really passionate about this. How can I support you in doing this? And how can I support you in taking the stuff that's not for you off of your plate?
That's so true about like caring, like somebody that cares about you, right? I think that's really the key here. And I think you get that from that initial conversation in your interviews, and like because how Bill mentioned, there's programs, right? And how do you choose, like, as a new student, I don't know, what kind of experience did you have, Greg, when you were interviewing? Did you have any red flags, any green flags that you saw in your interviews before you chose your first jobs?
Only in retrospect. Which
and that's what we're here. That's what we're doing this right now, right?
Yeah, all right.
A lot of hard lessons learned. No, I mean, I like, you just don't know. And I did have a lot of my internship. There were people who were helpful to me. I didn't get a ton of contact time with them. I got a lot more contact time with the people who, honestly, I think just wanted interns to beat up on, and it happens. But then, like, even in my first job out of school, there was still like I didn't know this. I should have been looking more for this thing, right? I had this mentality of like, oh, I got to pretend like I'm totally fine and totally competent. Like, that's what we need. And, there weren't that many people around that were really like, hey, let me help you out with this. It was more like, here's what you did wrong. Here's what you did wrong. Here's what you did wrong. Mm-hmm. But I was going to say I had, because I think like it's important to share stories of successful mentors. And I had this guy, Jeff Zuba, who's a zoo vet. And I like worked with him when I was in vet school. And one of the things I wanted to do is I wanted to go through, like, how do you publish a peer reviewed paper? And he had this project that he was working on and he needed help with it. And I was like, let me take it on. And we worked on it for like a year. We had weekly phone calls. He was nothing but positive with me. He was just like an amazing mentor in like going through that process. And like, we connected just as friends. I mean, we like tons of just dumb jokes about giraffe diarrhea and stuff like that. but which that sounds weird, but it's, trust me, it made sense at the time. And like we just had this really great like give and take feedback, and I literally learned how to go through this entire process. You know, he spent so much time guiding me through it in a way that like made it enjoyable for me and showed me like step by step, you know, here's what you do, here's what you do, here's what to expect, here's how to think about it. And so it was just great. And he wasn't there every day with me in the clinics and in vet school or in my internship, but that still was like a thread of connection for me of like, oh, there's people here who really care, who really want to see the next generation of veterinarians succeed and are willing to like spend time with them. And it's just like, I'm extremely grateful for that. And again, when you've gotten that, you go, oh, I want to do that for, you know, new grads when I'm out. So it just enriches everybody to kind of have that mentality, I think. Was that the question?
Yeah. Yeah. I wanted to give you a heads up. We're going down to 15 minutes. So I don't know if you guys had some questions written down for Dr. Boatright. Bill, I don't know if you had any more general questions. I have a lot more, so I didn't want to like keep going myself.
I think Greg, you asked earlier about the mentorship manual, and then I got child interrupted. But yeah, so I wrote the veterinary mentorship manual a couple of years ago. It's available as a PDF download on my website, and it takes practices through how to set up a mentorship program in your clinic. So it goes through like evaluating skills. It goes through how to set up a mentorship agreement. It has a sample schedule of if you're going to progress through, starting from, I don't like starting with shadowing. I prefer to call it co-working because no new grad wants to come out of school and then just follow someone around. I want them
true.
I want them engaged from the beginning.
Yes.
And then progressing, I have like a surgical and dental progression, has some tips for feedback, goal setting, and then just kind of how to get the team involved. And then I also have some newer resources that I'm working on putting out, like a mentorship meeting agenda, so that when you have those weekly check-ins, it gives you kind of a template so you can make them as efficient as possible. Kind of everybody knows what to expect. I have a new resource on mentoring a spectrum of care, which is my other passion area. And so, just trying to put as many tools as I can in the hands of the mentors, so that for private practices, you have a template you can use. You're not having to create it from scratch. So that was really my goal with the manual.
So about 2 years ago, I think it's almost exactly 2 years ago, but the AHA put out the mentorship guidelines.
Mm-hmm.
And I wrote a unnecessarily unkind and snarky. I thought I was being funny, but it was, I think I'm funny, but criticism of it. And I think my biggest criticism of it was that, like, what it drilled down to was that it wasn't the same like level of scholarly work. And a bunch of the authors have produced a ton of like very high quality work, right?
Mm-hmm.
Let me say that. But this wasn't it, right? Like we all step in it once in a while. But I think the idea of like writing a book, like it actually takes a book. Like it doesn't take a 10-page critique of, or like a 10-page like a 10-page guidelines document. Like, yep, this is how you do it. You'll be fine. Like, nope, there's more to it than that. And if you're going to do it right, you should take it that seriously. Like you should take it, read the book, write the program level seriously, and like give yourself time and space to do that. Otherwise you're just shoehorning it in. Like if you're trying to do both at the same time, like if you're trying to practice and manage and mentor all at once, like you're probably going to be bad at all of them.
Mm-hmm.
Like, give yourself time to do those things and it will go a lot better. You'll get a much better outcome.
Yeah, and I think I think too, like the guidelines. I mean, I think they have some great things about like high level, like how to do mentorship. but it isn't the nitty gritty of how to implement it in a clinic setting. I think it's zoomed out further from that.
And there were some, there was some advice about getting to know people and asking about their personal lives and all that kind of stuff that was like, from an HR perspective, like that is disastrous, right? Like that is minefield. And
not
like how they say
their family, and your family now, you're part of our family, and it's like, no, we're not.
There's stuff that like digging into that kind of stuff that is very.
But there is also a difference between mentoring in the clinic as a
right. If you're mentoring outside the clinic, it's completely different. Like if you're not their employer,
to employee versus
or employee to employee,
relationship,
like that's better.
Beyond that,
Yes, absolutely.
So I wanted to, sometimes, like, I don't know if your style is like this, though, Dr. Boatright, but you feel like sometimes students need to be pushed a little bit, like they kind of, like, I don't know, sometimes it's hard to tell, like, are they being like scared about it, but they can do it, or should we push, or like how would you approach those moments where you're like, man, like, I really know they can do it, and I think they should think they can do it, but they don't. And like is it a respect thing, or is it like, let me give it a little shove so they can fly type thing?
It's a very fine line. So I think there is definitely the like, one of the things I like to say is that a lot of our new grads, they come out with varying levels of confidence, and the a lack of confidence is not the same thing as a lack of knowledge. Because a lot of our new grads, they know how to do things, but they may not be confident in their ability to do it. And that's a big part of the mentor, is being that cheerleader and building them up and trying to help them to learn. Yes, you can do this. And so I think some of it is, instead of just when they come and ask for advice on a case, like, don't just give them your opinion, like really push them to share their own first. Like I tell my mentees, like, I am happy to help you on a case, but you need to come to me with a plan and a specific question. Don't just come to me and say, how do I treat this patient? The carve out for that would be like an emergency where it's critical and it's like, okay, yeah, I just need to jump in right now. But I do think as mentors, we do need to kind of start, like, as our mentees get more experience, sometimes we do have to give them a little bit of a push. Sometimes I'll start, if I think, hey, my mentee really can do this, it might be, hey, I am happy to help you, but I need to finish up what I'm working on right now. Give me 10 or 15 minutes and then I'll be in. Keep going until I get there. And sometimes in that 10 or 15 minutes, they figured it out. And then they're like, oh, I did this and it was great. But you have to have the confidence in them to be able to do that. And then you slowly start making that time like longer and longer where you're unavailable until they're operating, on their own. So I think it depends on the person, and you don't want to take someone who's super fearful and unconfident and give them that push, because then you're pushing them off a cliff. But it is, riding that line and finding, okay, I really think you can do this. And I'm here for you, but I really want you to take the lead.
I have a question to that end. Are you seeing more, like, when you talk to a lot of mentees, a lot of mentors, are you seeing more like regional differences, generational differences, gender differences? Are you, like, what are you seeing that are like, the most common stumbling blocks these days?
Yeah, so I definitely think there's a big difference between like where you went to school.
Sure.
Like certainly, like, some schools you come out really strong in some areas and not so strong in others.
Yep.
Some you get a lot of practical hands-on things, and others you're like, hey, like, I can work up that, dog with 3 different metabolic diseases that no one's ever heard of. But I can't treat an ear infection. So, I think sometimes it's, we expose our students in the teaching hospitals, they get exposed to a lot of things that aren't necessarily the practical things that they're going to see. For me, because I knew I wanted to go into general practice, I made sure I scheduled some rotations in general practice hospitals. so that I could make sure that, you know, I had some idea of how to incorporate that in my own work. But I would say some of the biggest kind of common across the board stumbling blocks I see, I think a big one is just figuring out efficiency. So especially, you know, as you move, a lot of mentors will start their mentees on longer appointment times. And then as you try to move them to that standard appointment time, making sure that they're efficient in their communication, but they're not making the client feel rushed. They're efficient in their medical records. You know, it's concise enough to convey everything. It's not the 5-page medical record that we're expected to write in school. And I think that's a big one. And then I think another big one is just, you know, getting comfortable working with a wider range of options, and that spectrum of care mindset of, you know, we don't, a lot of times in general practice, we're not able to tackle and offer that gold standard or we offer it to every client, but a lot of our clients aren't able to pursue it. And it doesn't make you a bad vet because you're off, you know, that you're often pursuing a middle ground option, or you're doing empirical treatment and then coming back for the diagnostics later. So I think that's another big one that it's slowly improving. It's slowly being addressed more in the curriculum, but we all know, you know, academic changes take time.
Right. And Greg, you had a question? Wait, you're muted.
Kate, if you could comment like overall positive trends, like you know, the fact that you've got this book out there and, you know, your face and your brand is there saying like, let's do this, here's how to do it. Like, what else are you seeing that's making you feel good about just the trend of mentoring in Vetmed?
Yeah, I mean, I think like one is just that it is being talked about more. I think we have to be careful that we don't like make it a huge buzzword that just everybody's talking about it, but nobody's doing anything about it. Because I've seen, you know, that happen sometimes. But I've also, I think like I've seen there's so much more support for our new grads and mentees now. There are, you know, there are several national mentoring platforms. And I think those can be really helpful, especially if you are like a solo doctor bringing on a new grad, to enroll your new grad in one of those mentoring programs, because that takes some of the burden off of you. Like you still need to provide mentorship in the hospital, but you know, you don't have to do it all alone. And so I think, you know, with the technological advances that we have, being able to connect with people in different areas, I think the other advantage of those mentoring groups and programs is having that peer support of being able to connect with other new grads who are going through similar circumstances. So I think those are huge steps forward in mentoring.
And I think the fact that students are hearing about it during school and knowing and aware that they have to ask about it, and I think they're getting more prepared than what I was coming out of school to know what to look for. And part of why we're doing this right now today, right, is to kind of maybe give little tips and little things that they should be looking for and asking that maybe we didn't. And I think that's probably the main trend that I'm seeing, that they are more aware, and they know they need it, versus that feeling of like, I have to be good at this when I graduate. Like, I'm about to be a vet, I'm about to be a doctor, and I know the books, but I don't know what I'm doing. I would call the doctors the real doctors on my first job. I'd be like, oh, wait, let me ask one of the real doctors, and I'll be right back.
I need a grown up. Hold on.
I used to always tell the client, like,
yeah,
I would like to look at this under better light, which was my code word for I need help. I need my mentor. Now I'm just saying to a client, hey, I want to get my colleague's opinion. I'm going to steal your pet for a minute. But like as a new grad, I was scared to say that.
We haven't been out that long.
That I want another opinion. It was, I'm going to go look under better light in the treatment area. And then I'd run to my mentor and be like, what is this? So that was, and then she'd tell me and I'd come back in and I'd say, okay, so I ran into, you know, Dr. Crombie while I was in the treatment area and we got to talking. So like I'd acknowledge that I got help, but I didn't want to tell them.
Yes, that's important.
Well, it's worth noting too that like it doesn't feel like we've been out that long, but I guess we have. You know, we're measuring it in the double digits now. But like,
yeah,
the Merck veterinary manual's 1,000 pages long. It's almost 50% longer than it was when we graduated. right? And like I get that some of it's pictures, but not all of it. So
Yeah.
like there's more to learn, and vet school's not a minute longer than it was.
Right, exactly. That's what, yeah, there's so much more knowledge. There's so much more knowledge, and yet vet school is still 4 years. And so it is about, I think, focusing on teaching people how to problem solve and think through cases is the most important skill that they need to pick up in vet school.
Cool. Well, we're up to an hour here. I don't want to take much more of your time. I really appreciate you being here, Dr. Boatright, for this talk. I understand if you need to go. I know that we all have a lot going on. I appreciate you taking the time to join us and, having this conversation, because, I enjoy sitting down and talking to these people and you, for an hour is great. I don't know if there's any final thoughts from anybody else before we close up. Everybody good?
Thank you for being here.
Yeah, thank you, Kate.
Yeah, thank you guys. This was great, and I mean, I am always happy to continue the mentorship conversation. My social media has been a little bit quiet lately, and I'm going to take the next month as kind of recovery after giving 8 lectures at AVMA.
Wow.
So
that's amazing.
Yeah.
So we have four AVMA speakers here. That's pretty good crew here.
Yeah. So yeah, I'm excited to see what the future holds for mentorship and for the profession. So I think we're going in the right direction.
Thank you for your work.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. All right, everybody. Thanks for listening. Whoever's listening later, we're gonna have this recorded on our YouTube channel, and we'll be here next month again. Take care.
Yeah,
See you later.